Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees, typically around £1 million turnover or so, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times. Only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face, and we aim to make things a little easier through ScaleUp Radio with guests who have been where we are now, may have faced some of the challenges that we're facing, and can offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. We have also combined many of the lessons from our interviews and through working with hundreds of owner-managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner-managers like you as you navigate your own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk. In this episode of ScaleUp Radio, we have a couple of presentations and a panel discussion on the theme of how and why to define your core purpose. Don't underestimate the power of galvanizing your team around a purpose. The longer that I've been in business and the more businesses that we have worked with, it's become clearer and clearer that those with a really strong sense of identity, of core values and core purpose, are the ones that really do succeed over time and go further than others. They also tend to be the most resilient in challenging times. Purpose-driven workers, furthermore, are more than 50% likely to stay for 5 years or more at a company and 30% more likely to grow into high performers than those who arrive at work with only their paycheck as a motivator. And in this episode, Louise guides us through what we need to think about, and we bring in additional perspectives from Avis of Audacious Creative and Lizzy Bernthal of Release Your Potential about their thoughts on core purpose. And Lizzy also covers an excellent section on integrity. This episode is wrapped up then with a panel discussion where a group of business owners discuss their take on core purpose and the importance it has on their business.
So, getting that vision and strategy aligned with the execution. Interestingly, we randomly pick these themes for the months, and it really does tie in very closely today with the idea of what the vision and the core purpose. Lots of people think that's a bit of a fluffy thing, but it's a really strong point to start to really create that vision. So it sits very perfectly with the idea of creating that vision and strategy and moving it forward with the alignment through the business to execution. I think you'll hear from a couple of our speakers today a little bit more about that. Last month, we talked about engagement. And the interesting thing is, again, looking at some statistics, where you've got a mission or purpose-driven workers and a mission or purpose-driven business, 54% are more likely to stay for 5 or more years. And they're 35% more likely to grow into high performers than those who arrive at work with only the paycheck as a motivator. It's quite a sobering thought how wonderfully powerful engagement is. So 81% of those working for companies with a strong purpose and mission stated that their stakeholders hold trust in their leadership team, whereas that number was 54% for organizations without a strong mission. That was from Forbes in 2018, and nothing has changed really fundamentally in those last 4 years. So really understanding your mission, your core purpose is critical to allowing us to engage. And it's not just the engagement. You get your core purpose right, you should be using it for recruitment, which will in turn mean that you're more likely to bring on people who will really get who you are, why you exist, what they're there to do. So it's a fundamental part of building a business. So getting it right is quite important. And quite frankly, to be honest with you, the longer that we've been in business and the more businesses that we work with, the clearer it is that those with a strong sense of core values and core purpose are the ones who succeed over time. It's our experience as well. So we're not just relying on other people's research to do that. And they also tend to be the most resilient when times are challenging. There are a number of people who are here today who've been with Bismarck quite a long time. We've been through some challenging times recently, and we're still going through them. So I think now is also, if you don't have a strong core purpose, now is a really good time to think about it, to work it through, and to try and develop that, because it will help you as we go through the challenging times that are ahead of us. And I'm now going to just quickly introduce Stu Avis and Lizzy Bernthal, and they're going to give us a sort of 5 minutes each, whistle stop, whiz through on their takings and their thoughts on core purpose. Stu, can I bring you in?
Good morning, everyone. So my business is actually really fundamentally based around helping business owners develop and create their own core purpose for themselves. And we do that in a number of ways. So I just kind of wanted to share a few thoughts, and then just a really sort of fairly simple way that actually you can go about in creating and devising your own core purpose if you haven't got one. We simply define vision as where you're going, and purpose, why you're going there, and mission is how you're going to get there. And that's that kind of envisioned future that Louise was talking about. So I just kind of wanted to just kind of clarify that. So firstly, what is it? Well, it is your why. The Japanese have come up with this amazing phrase. It's called ikagi, or ikigai. And it's a motivating force, something that gives someone or something a sense of purpose and a reason for living. So your purpose is your why. It's the reason why you embark on the journey, particularly for a business owner, of running your business in the first place. So it's fundamentally your why. It's a compass. It guides you towards the impact that you want to make. And it's really important to always be considering the impact, the difference that you want to make. Why did you set up your business in the first place? Generally, it's because actually you want to make a difference to something or to someone or to a group of people. So a core purpose helps you align with kind of that impact, that difference that you want to make. And actually it keeps you going. When the going gets tough, and we all know that business life is difficult sometimes, and it's ups and downs and it's challenges, it helps you stick to the task when things get tough. So why have one? Well, it gets buy-in from prospects and potential recruits. So it helps you grow your business in terms of sales, but also actually get the right people in place to help you drive your business forward. So it gets buy-in before you get buy from, and that's kind of really important. It enables, as Louise was saying, to make great decision making. As it does, does our core purpose mean that we can do this, or does it mean that we shouldn't be doing that? And so it crystallizes some of that thinking. And it also builds a loyal tribe. In general, a sense of community, togetherness among your team. It's about everyone in the business pulling together in the same direction for the same reason. And so it's not just about necessarily coming into work for a paycheck, but actually it's a loyal tribe. And that can then extend out to kind of customers and to prospects. But actually, firstly, you really want to be creating that loyal tribe of people that go on that journey with you. So that's just a kind of really brief sort of overview, and so just backing up a lot of what Louise was saying. And it's worth also saying that actually your core purpose shouldn't change, but the way that you express it and communicate it will evolve over time. And that's kind of really important to think about. So how can you develop one? Well, we've created a little sort of system, and I'm just going to share it with you now. So firstly, it takes time. It's not something that can be done kind of in 5 minutes on the back of a kind of a pizza box or whatever. It does take time. I'm going to go through the 4 R's in a minute, so don't worry. It's about then sharing that and refining it, and then actually finalizing it, setting it in stone, if you were. So this is our core purpose. This is our why. This is kind of what we stand for. It's then communicating it. If it sits in a drawer, it's kind of pointless. And it's then actually living and breathing it. And that's kind of really important. It's not just, again, about sort of knowing it in here. It's about bringing it to life. So what are the 4 R's? This is the process, the framework that we've created to help our clients develop their own core purpose. So first is reconnect with the past. If you've been running your business for probably 3 or more years, probably forgotten what it was like when those very early days, even before you set up your business. Why did you start your business in the first place? What was your original vision? What plan did you have? What dream? What mattered to you? Who did you want to serve, to help and support? If you're thinking about your core purpose, go back to the beginning, because there's so much stuff there that we just lose in the kind of the depths of time. And then once you've reconnected with the past, those early days, that excitement, that passion, that vision, it's then reflecting, so where are we now? What journeys have we gone on between those early days when it was all a big adventure and now? Where are we now? What's changed? What's stayed the same? How did we get here? Have we grown, gone back because of various circumstances outside our control? What matters to us now? What impact are we making compared to what impact we want to be making when we first started? And then it's about re-envisioning. So it's then the future. So actually, where do you want to be in 1, 3, 5, 10 years' time? It's that kind of envision future again that Louise was talking about. What impact and difference do you want to be making? It comes back down to that impact all the time. And to who? Are you still holding true in 5 and 10 years' time to your core purpose, which is, the why, the ikigai that I mentioned right at the start? And what's driving you and pushing you forward? As Louise said, what is it that's getting you out of bed in the morning? And then once you've reconnected, once you've reflected, once you've re-envisioned, you then need to respond, because otherwise it's just kind of wasted time. So it's about since launch, what's the same, what's changed, evolved, and you write the stuff down. And as you write it down, as you work through those things, you then begin to actually, this is why we do what we do, and this is who we do it for. This is what drives and sustains and excites us. This is the kind of the impact and the legacy that we want to leave. And that, in a nutshell, is kind of, in 5 minutes, is the kind of core purpose 101. Go, that's me, and I hope that's helped.
Brilliant. I think that was really good, some really good stuff there. And, we will make that information available. I love that. The vision is the destination, the mission is the journey, and the purpose is the why and the how. Fantastic. So I am now going to hand over to Lizzy, who is going to follow that.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So lovely to see you all. So I'm on a mission to get rid of toxicity in the workplace. That is my mission. My purpose is to help all leaders and business owners own who they are by finding their confidence and resilience within them. So there is no place for toxicity, because they shine and they build their teams and go forth. So that's my mission. But part of my values are integrity, justice, and connection. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is Kevin's asked me to talk about what integrity means, because we see integrity as a word bandied around everywhere. And most businesses will have integrity, innovation as part of their mission statements. And then you see it's not working in practice. So what my interpretation of integrity is, if you think of a bicycle wheel, now that might sound a bit strange. When a bicycle wheel is working fully effectively, it just flows. It just goes round. There's no clunkiness. When you have a dent in a bicycle wheel, it just clocks and it just clunks. That, to me, is what integrity is. So integrity, yes, we know it's all about being honest, having strong moral principles, being ethical, being trustworthy. But it's so much more than that, because actually it's being the real deal. It's being the leader when no one's watching. It's actually being in integrity with ourselves. Now, what do I mean by that? It's things like say no when you want to say no. Don't say yes when you want to say no. That people-pleasing stuff, even when we're people-pleasing and don't want to offend people, sometimes we're actually out of integrity of who we really are. So have a think. And I think it's not about not making mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's about clearing them up when we make them. So, for example, if we are going to be late for a meeting, we get stuck in traffic. That's not an issue. It's actually giving them a call to say, sorry, I'm going to be late for 5 minutes. That's been in integrity. So it's having a think about how we practice our day-to-day life. Are we accountable to ourselves? Are we accountable to other people? Do we do what we say we do? It's also noticing the language we use as well. If we say we're going to try and do something, that is really telling us that actually we're not intending to do it. I'm going to try and get to the gym. Well, actually, you've actually let yourself out before you've even started, because you're actually saying to yourself, you're either going to the gym or you're not going to the gym. So it happens in every aspect of our life. And it's admitting when we're wrong. Have a think what your values are. because we can all read these words. Now, what does innovation mean? What does connection mean? What does collaboration mean? Because when we set up our vision and our purpose, the most important thing is to think about, why is it important to us? So yes, we have our bigger why. It's what is the legacy we want to leave in the world? But I think in order to find your why, sometimes it's also worth asking yourself, why is this important to me 7 times? Because when you know you're very close to it, it gets really emotional, because suddenly you think, oh my goodness, this is the reason I was put on this planet. This is the impact I want to make. As you have a think about your vision and your purpose today, have a think about the values that really are important to you. Because you know, if you go into an Apple store, every single person in that organization, their values are embedded in everything that they do. And that's when you know that the values are correct, because they are in your being. They're not just part of your vision statement that you, so somebody's going to come around, do an inspection, you think, oh yeah, what are our values? I've got to think about it. You should be able to talk to everybody in that organization, and it should just come off the tongue, because that is part of who they are. It's part of their DNA. So that's my little thoughts today about integrity, and I look forward to speaking to you later.
Thank you, Lizzy. Thank you for that insight. And I think, integrity is such an important part of when you're thinking about your core purpose. And it's really important to have that within the core purpose. There's no point having it if you're not going to live it yourself. It doesn't have integrity within you, because people will see through that really, really quickly. Think about that in terms of when you're putting together your core purpose. How do you build that into it? So what we are going to do, we are going to now move into the next section of the morning, if you like, which is that we will go into some breakout sessions. So what we're going to do is we're going to break you out into groups of 5 businesses with a person who's going to head up and guide the discussion and keep you on time. But during that session, you got the chance to have your own little spotlight. So you'll get 10 minutes each in the spotlight. Very quickly, perhaps in a minute or 2, no more than that, explain who you are, what your challenge is for the group today. Is it something around core purpose? Do you want to explore that more? Or do you have some burning issue in your business at the moment that you'd like a bit of insight into? And we'll have a look at how we can help as a group.
So, Gary, what springs to your mind about the core purpose?
So we had a process earlier in the year actually to run through this. I had a little presentation back to the team, and it was very well received. Yeah, I think it's really important, and if it's done correctly, it just kind of helps everyone in the business with a bit of focus. Especially as we're all trying to grow and scale businesses, you can often get distracted or kind of go down a bit of a rabbit hole. So that kind of mission and vision, if it's implemented correctly, can keep you on the right track. I think probably the most difficult thing is kind of instilling it into staff, and making sure that it's there for every kind of process. Whether that's from recruitment, hiring and firing, all the way through to types of clients that you bring on or do not bring on, really. So very important. But I think probably the most difficult thing for me personally was just making sure it's instilled into the business.
Lisa, what would you add to that?
I think it's challenging for a business, because in life we just know we need purpose, don't we? It shapes us, it guides us, it makes us who we are and gets us to where we want to be. And I think all too often in business, people forget that actually the business is the same. It's still almost a living entity, isn't it? It needs that purpose to drive it through. But because you've got so many different people and personalities working there, it gives everybody that common vision of exactly where we're going and what we're doing it all for, really.
Matt, what did you take away from it?
Well, I was reading through part of the book, because I know you've read Ages. I think I sort of more took away from it the importance as you scale, as far as the team being able to make decisions without me having to tell them what to do. And I think that's the more important thing. When you first start out, I think you all look at your sort of core values, and in your own head sort of why you do what you do. And I suppose you don't apply too much importance to it, although you should. But I think it sort of plays a bigger part that those core values are displayed to your team as you grow, so they know exactly how I would want it to be perceived and how I would want the core of the business to be followed. So as I always say to customers, I'm here to inform and educate you to make a technology decision that's going to help your business rather than tell them what they need. And the team, I believe, embed that into what they do as well, rather than instructing them and dictating to them what they do. It's advisory. This is what we should be doing. I appreciate there's a budget involved, that sort of thing. So every decision that I make, the team do understand, and they understand the core values behind why we do what we do. And that customer service also is everything that we do as well.
Faith, anything? What else would you add?
I definitely agree with both of those points. And for us, it's an area that needs a bit of work. But we've kind of now got to the point where we've nailed, we think, core purpose and values, but it's communicating it across the board. And they're really valid points, actually, that it's not just about what's kind of in our heads as leaders or as business owners, but how we can get that message across so that it is ingrained in everybody from the moment they kind of start working. So yes, I definitely agree with those points.
Stu, something that you work with businesses around, isn't it? Purpose and values.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways nothing really to add to what anyone else has just kind of said. But I think it's just from a practical point of view, just reminding yourself almost on a monthly basis what your core purpose is or why you're doing what you're doing. And don't just do it as a solo exercise, but actually do it with a team, because that's the thing that is that understanding what the core purposes are to why you do what you do that actually keeps people sticking to the task at hand. So when the going does get tough, and it does in all our businesses, actually remembering why we are doing what we're doing is kind of a really fundamental thing, and can sometimes often be the difference between make and break. So it's just kind of constantly reminding yourself of sort of, like guiding yourself towards the impact you want to make and sticking to your core and sticking to that sense of purpose.
Definitely some common themes coming out here, and it's a challenge enough to get a good core purpose actually defined, but then making it live along with the values within the rest of the team is where the real magic happens, but it's also where it's probably the hardest bit to do in a way. Peter, what would you add to this?
I think there were two things I thought of. One was that, yes, there's an internal aspect to kind of vision and values and core purpose, but equally it's also about the external aspect. So if you know what they are and you're able to communicate them and your team can communicate them externally, then one, from a recruitment perspective, that's good because people will look for companies now that have a core purpose that's well defined, that they want to buy into, but also clients. Clients want to work with companies that meet their values, meet their expectations. So I think you can use it both on the internal piece, but also kind of on the external piece. Interestingly, we're just about to redo ours because the team has grown from me to kind of 8 people. Actually, as we've scaled so much, we're at the point where we need to rethink through the values to make sure they're the same still. So it's going to be an interesting exercise, I think.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because, we'd like to think that the core purpose and the core values sort of are set forever, but they're not. The business does evolve, and we certainly need to refine it, take the opportunity to make sure that it's still fit for purpose, essentially. Paul?
Yeah, I think the team aspect was what I immediately thought of is like, having a core purpose and core values in your own head as a business owner and not communicating it is probably the worst thing you could possibly do, is try and get people to act in the way that you would. But I think it also helps with decision making and accountability. Like, it's ultimately what builds up part of a culture in a business. So I was kind of thinking of the reverse of what would a business look like in absence of a strong core purpose or core values.
Interesting.
Compared to one that's where you've got it. And I think where we use it quite well is if we have, say, I don't know, something happen in the business where a team member has done something, and obviously we'd look at the process rather than the individual and stuff, but we've got the core values as well to look at their attitude towards things and how they behaved and how we would respond. And I think core values and core purpose are completely redundant if your team don't buy into it, because you could say all the things in the right way, but if people don't live by it. So to me, it's culture. And then with decision making, it helps with, again, what Peter was saying, it helps you to kind of work out who's on profile as well in terms of a prospect. If you know that you're trying to achieve X as a long-term kind of goal and what you stand for, it helps you easily identify those that don't share your values as potential customers. And sometimes it's quite a good sidestepper because you just have a clash of opinions and stuff. So, yeah, I think it's team massively communicating it. But I think what Peter was saying, the internal, the external, and the culture builder, really.
So if we went round the room, would everybody be able to articulate what their core purpose is? And I haven't asked you yet, Claire, but what would you add to this discussion around the core purpose?
I think, as business owners, we've set the business up from scratch, and it's kind of almost like our baby, and it's really our passion. It's trying to get that across to our team. So they're not just paying lip service to it, but they're actually living it, and also understanding our why are we doing what we do. And it's not just that we provide HR to small businesses. The actual why is so that we can give them reassurance so business owners can sleep at night. And the other thing I always say to my team is to put themselves in client shoes. So we might be delivering something for us, which is, a bit boring maybe, or just our bread and butter. We can do it, quite easily. But actually to our clients, it's completely different. It's a real kind of a lifeline to them, or a reassurance to them, or a night they can sleep, or, it's taken away that kind of worry and concern. So it's quite often putting what we do in our client's shoes and how they feel about it.
Excellent. So yes, absolutely about that why. And I suspect Stu would very much resonate with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's cool. It's something interesting Peter said. I think that it's really important because your core values and your core purpose should never really change. But actually how you define it and the words you use to describe it will change as you evolve over time. So I went back to some really early stuff that I wrote 12. My business is 12 years old in 4 days' time. And I found some stuff that I wrote then. And actually, the core values haven't changed in the slightest from day one to now. And actually, the words that I use to describe it and define it have very clearly changed over time as I've understood what they mean better, as I've learned how to communicate them better and more effectively, but also kind of to make them more meaningful to whether people that we're kind of talking to in terms of prospects or potential recruits as well. I think it's constantly worth going through and saying maybe the heart of what we are and why we do what we do hasn't changed, but maybe we need to look at actually the words we use to define that it actually makes it meaningful for our chosen audience, whoever that is, whether that's internal or external.
Do you want to go around the room and share each other's core purposes? Stu, do you want to kick off?
So we want to be history makers. So our purpose is to unlock and unleash potential in leaders, their people and their businesses so they can grow and win the right clients and hire the right people.
Great. Paul?
For Wellgiving, it's to raise £1 million for charity and improve the physical health of 100,000 users.
All right. Matt?
Yeah, so our core purpose is to provide, educate and advise business owners of their technology needs while being ethical and transparent with them to help their business.
Gary?
Our purpose is creating success in the digital space.
Brilliant. Peter?
Ours is to help ambitious growth companies scale through providing embedded talent acquisition.
Faith?
Ours is to equip tradespeople with superior hunt tools through passion and a relentless pursuit of innovation.
Excellent. Lisa?
Ours is to help companies generate new business or retain existing clients by offering a safe pair of hands consultative approach.
Good. Claire?
Core purpose is to inform, advise and educate small business employers so they feel reassured about their HR, confident that things are being done correctly and lawfully, and that they can sleep at night.
Brilliant. Good. And ours, we've brought ours right down to helping to create more scale-ups. Louise, what would you add to the discussion that we've had so far?
I'll be honest, there's not much to add. I mean, the thing that I always come back to that has been mentioned briefly, but if you get your core purpose right, it fundamentally helps you with strategic decision making. So you can use it, if you're going to look at some strategic decision, you check it against your core purpose. If it matches the core purpose, then it's an automatic go ahead and look into it more deeply. If it doesn't, then you need to sort of question, is it the right thing to be doing?
Good. Mel?
Yeah, I'd kind of reinforce what Louise has just said, and I'd written down a couple of things like how do we know how our customers feel or what they value? And it's really important to understand how they feel and what they value to make sure that we're actually delivering on our promise, our core purpose. So getting that kind of feedback from our customers is really important, and also getting that feedback from the team as well, ensuring that our team are kind of performing in line with that core purpose and what it is that we're trying to do for our customer base.
So do we think if we went round our team members that they could also rattle off the core purpose? Yeah, probably less able to do it. So there's something there, isn't there, around the communication. And essentially, there's been a lot of good stuff coming out about the benefits of a good core purpose. But then the challenge, as always, and it has come out this morning, is around how we make sure that the team live it. So what we're saying is, can we define the core ideology, which we talk about as being the core purpose, but the core values that have been mentioned a couple of times already, that they're defined, they're known, and they're made role relevant by all employees. So that's something that's an interesting exercise maybe to think about doing is, okay, well, if there are core values, what does that mean to me in my role? Or if that's the core purpose, in my particular role within the business, what does that mean? Because the more that people have made it role relevant, the more that they can think about how that applies to them and how they can live it. Have we thought about embedding the core ideology into all aspects of everything that we do? So with Claire's side of the business, with recruitment, with the HR side, is it in our recruitment process? Are we looking for evidence of the core values or things like that within that? And the same with onboarding, the same with reviews and feedback. One way of really practically starting to live them is every 90 days include something in your priorities that is around a core ideology initiative, whether it's around the core purpose itself or whether it's around the core values. But what could you look at in the next 90 days that would help to really get people to be living those core values and that core purpose? For Peter, this particular time, they're revisiting it and how they define it. So that's great. But then from there, how do they communicate that around the business? And then maybe how do they make that live on an ongoing basis? And it is generally one of those things that probably, certainly early on in my career, I would have not exactly poo-pooed it, but I just would have sort of said, let me get on with my work, really. But the more businesses that we've worked with, the more we've seen, and particularly through crises like the pandemic, businesses that have really got a strong identity, they're the ones that are able to really adapt, but in the right way, and really get everybody behind and pull through. So it is incredibly important. Anything else anybody want to add before we close this part of the meeting? Useful? Yep. I know it's a topic we've covered before, but again, it's so important. It's really good to come back to look at things like Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. Stu loves that, and it is a really good thing. It's starting with why. So I'd encourage, and I know our core purpose isn't perfect, and we're still wrestling with that a little bit. But have a think about your core purposes as you define them, and make sure they really do uncover the why and not just the what you're doing. There were a couple in there that sounded a bit more, this is what we do. So really make sure that why has come through nice and clearly, if at all possible. As we do with these things, we've all got our core purpose, or at least we've all thought about it before. But this is an opportunity for us to just have a revisit things, just see if there's anything else there to remind us that we might need to think about. And if we've developed our core purpose, then it might be a little bit more about then how do we really embed that? How do we make sure it's being lived on a regular basis by all of the team? But I'm interested in a bit of a discussion as to what you took out of the information that we sent round and had a little chance to think it through. So, David.
Yeah, I think we did a lot of work on this probably, 5 years ago, something like that. So I think for us in our sector, values, purpose, vision, culture is really important. It's probably one of our biggest differentiators. We're not just a software vendor. Everybody's got features and functions, but that's kind of easy to create. But the sort of core values and core purpose is, I think, quite strong for us, and we recruit based on those areas. So I think we haven't necessarily, we periodically come back to core values and purpose, and we did tweak them probably about 12 months ago or so. I think it's important to do that, and making sure that our sales, marketing, and then internal recruitment and HR bits all kind of link those together. We've periodically done work around these topics internally on management meetings and also team meetings. So yeah, for us, it's absolutely key. It's our only differentiator in essence, and people buy from people. And obviously if the core values and purpose is right, then we'll align nicely with our clients.
Claire, what would you add?
We did a similar exercise when we started Smart Boards on this, and to be honest, we do revisit them, but these 5 core values are always at the heart of everything we do. And they are now built into the business, into all the services, into our HR and recruitment. So obviously, if you bring people on that live by these core values and are prepared to deliver services to clients via them, then you get a team that are all working in the right direction, don't you, all for the same goal. And I think one of the things that is a differentiator for us is actually we deliver these core values. I think there's lots of people that can put lots of things on their website. We do this, we do that. And actually, when the customer experiences the polar opposite, it can be really irritating, and they'll just switch off and move supplier. So, you know, ours are empowering deaf people, providing innovative solutions, delivering the highest quality service, being responsive to customers and valuing our customer satisfaction. One of the things we get is really, really good feedback on all of our services. We're always moving our services and changing them to make sure that they are as innovative as possible. We're the only company with all the services in one place, because we've kind of made sure that we empower deaf people by providing everything. And we're really, really responsive. We have so many organisations come to us and subcontract to us because we can respond really quickly. And that's something now that when anyone joins us, everyone lives by those values.
So do you have questions within your recruitment that help to tease out some of the core values?
Yeah. So one of the things, because obviously we have tons and tons of emails every single day. And so we always talk about time management and priority, so client priority, so that our clients come first. So, you know, you don't sit there doing admin when there's a client waiting. And often in our field, everybody leaves booking interpreters to the last minute. So it's quite a stressful environment, but at the same time, we've got to be there when they need us and deliver. And so there's always questions around prioritising workload and time management, how you prioritise, how would you decide what is a priority and what's not a priority, those sort of things. And then also there's customer services questions, so that we can tease out, have they had any experience of a negative customer response, a positive customer response, how you would deal with that. And then obviously there's questions around, have you had any deaf awareness training? Do you have BSL skills? Have you ever worked in our industry before? It's quite unique, our industry, obviously. And we have a couple of people that what I would call a unicorn. So they do the role, but they have done it in our sector before. And then we've taken other people on that have never been in our sector, and we've obviously trained them and educated them on how to support our deaf clients.
And what's your core purpose?
Improving accessibility for deaf people for products, services, work, every sector. Provision of in-person interpretation, video interpretation, and translation of documents, and educating clients on how to be accessible or support deaf people into work. So we don't have a sentence. It's quite detailed.
Yeah. What's yours, David?
To essentially make carers' lives simpler and easier.
Oh, that's nice, Dave.
Polar opposites.
It's a little easy to remember, isn't it?
I didn't have to read that one off.
I was going to say, there was an almost "I hate you," Dave, coming over there.
Yeah, interesting. We might come back to that in a minute. David Lincoln Lewis. What about you? What about with industrial switchgear?
Well, it's a bit like Fight Club, actually, when it comes to core values. We don't talk about Fight Club. We've been around a long time. I mean, we haven't necessarily done a piece of work in it that's gone around the team. However, we did that piece of work at the start when we met Kevin regarding the core purposes. Is in the middle of the whole, what we're there for. And the core purposes that we've discussed as a management team, which does get filtered down to the teams in different ways. Things like building a quality product, being responsive to customer requirements, project managing, making sure we do effective project management so the customer can feel comfortable that we're doing what we need to be doing, providing the expertise. And our strap line really, it's not on the website. The website is any panel, any situation, if you know what I mean. But it's to be the best goddamn panel builder in the world. And that's what we pass around through the team. And that's what everybody works towards. But really, it's all about quality, not about the cheapest, but about the best.
I like that for company. I suspect Louise quite likes that, because I think that's an interesting point in that you wouldn't necessarily stick that on your website, because the core purpose is not necessarily a marketing slogan. It's what you live by as a business, and messaging might come from it, and same with your core values. But the Nike one is a really nice core purpose, which I'm going to let Louise talk us through, because I know Louise loves the Nike core purpose.
It is, because it perfectly illustrates why a core purpose is not necessarily a marketing slogan. To experience the emotion of competition, winning and crushing competitors, which sounds quite aggressive. And, you might look at them and go, why, what? But actually what they've done there is align themselves perfectly to their core customer base, the core customer base that makes them who they are, which is elite athletes. They exist and their whole ethos is improving the performance of elite athletes. So they've aligned themselves with their client. And on the back of that, of course, they've sold billions of dollars of product to the rest of us. But essentially, their core purpose is to improve the performance of elite athletes. And on the back of that, sell out to the public. And that innovation drive that comes from aligning themselves with their customers, which is competition, winning and crushing competitors. So I really like that one because it illustrates perfectly why it doesn't need to be a marketing slogan, because you've never heard them say it out loud.
Like be the best goddamn panel builder in the world,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, on the website, we do have the one about any panel, any size and that sort of thing on every page of the website. But really, it's the what we marshal ourselves on around, galvanize ourselves around the team is to be the best goddamn panel builder. That's really the motto that goes through the team.
Yeah.
And it's a great one for bringing everybody together, isn't it, within the organisation? And you can hang an awful lot of things off the back of that.
Well, from a recruitment
because at the
side,
end of the day, you refer back to it, and it illustrates perfectly how if you get it right, it also helps with strategic decision making, because you can ask the question: will this help us become the best goddamn panel maker in the world? Yes or no?
It does make a massive difference, because especially recruitment wise, Kevin was asking about, you ask questions to draw that out in an interview, and sometimes that can be a little bit early and a little bit, but I mean, generally speaking, it comes through reviews. When we have annual reviews, because you can see how they've been educated by the elder statesmen of the staff, how they bring that through to the individual. Sometimes it can be better if it happens organically rather than being too direct, and you can get a feel for how the people feel rather than telling them how they should feel, and they tell you how they actually feel. And I think they can create, to a degree, a core value that you weren't necessarily aware of before. And listening is very important, I think.
And Paul, what about you? What's your take on it?
We don't have a written sort of core purpose at the moment. It's an exercise we need to go through. I did do one a number of years ago. We've never revisited it, which in hindsight probably should have done with the way the business has grown and changed over the last 2 to 3 years. And just picking on what some other people have said there, we're quite a crowded marketplace, so we try and differentiate yourself is all on customer service and the responsiveness and being the experts at being the best goddamn electricians out there. So yeah, ours is all built around the customer service. We say we don't have that documented, and honestly, it's something we try to drive within the teams and recruiting the right people. We don't have questions at interview to get that. Our interview questions are generally around technical competence and experience, and so on that customer service level, it's done on gut feel at interview. Really, will this person look like they fit into the team? So we don't have anything that will draw that out, but probably something we need to look at and get better at.
Let me ask the question, there's a little bit, I suppose, in the information centre, but maybe we should have started with, why do we think it's important to have a really well-defined core purpose? I mean, we can extend it a little bit to core values as well, including core values, but essentially, why is it really important to have a well-defined core purpose?
Isn't it identity and something to belong to, and a pattern for knowing what looks or feels right from a person point of view, and also perhaps a product and service point of view?
A pattern, did you say?
Yeah, a template. Does this fit?
Yeah.
Does this fit us? I mean, for us in software, it's very easy for us to get distracted with lots of different ideas and building different tools and systems for other sectors or other markets. But actually, does it fit our core purpose of making carers' lives easier?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And therefore, there's a way of actually using that to differentiate or know and understand direction of travel.
Yeah, so it can help us to focus, essentially, help us to reject ideas perhaps that are outside and keep us on focus. Certainly that's key.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think fundamentally it galvanizes the message top down as well. I mean, if all your management team is sort of like, if you don't discuss this as a management team, how do you know you're all on the same page? I think it helps to define the messaging through the business. And if you don't have that conversation, which we hadn't had before we met with Kevin, basically, then And I think that was an interesting session when we drew out what our core purpose was and what our USPs, if you like, were within the business. And if we hadn't had that conversation, we'd probably be pulling in different directions, even though we thought we were putting in the same direction, which is building a panel. I think that's really important for us.
Claire, anything, you don't know, why is it so important?
Yeah, I think it's important because it gives you a spine to be able to build out the rest of your products, services, processes. So for me, I kind of see it as like, the middle of a book, and then I've got all my, because my ISO is all driven by customer services, quality, and the security of the services we deliver, and the environment in which we deliver those services in, the response times, all of those things that are our core purposes are all kind of measured in our ISO, and all our processes are to make sure that an interpreter goes to an assignment fully prepared to provide a high quality service. So we have an ISO that manages that. You have an ISO that manages what the customer thinks afterwards and the whole process. And so instead of kind of sitting there and going, these are our core purposes and this is why we do what we do, it's just across all the pages of the business, as in, like, if you follow this process and therefore you won't be non-conformed, then the result will end up being that you are effectively delivering the core purpose.
I think, we've had a really good discussion, and there's a couple of other things that just might be worth emphasising. It's either to ignore it or to pay lip service to it. It's one of those things that it can feel a bit touchy-feely in a way. Let's have this wonderful core purpose. Kevin's said, and Louise have said, whatever. Let's have a core purpose. And I was I had to say, I was very much like that when I started out in my career working for a company. It's like, okay, well, great. Whatever they say the core values are and the core purpose, fine. But actually, the more that we've worked with businesses, particularly over the last 10 years or so, we've really seen how those with a strong sense of purpose, strong identity, are really able to survive the ups and downs of business, for one. So things like the pandemic, they've been able to really hold on to that. But also, if you think about we were talking about engagement last month as the topic, and measuring engagement, and how the fact that actually there's a relatively small percentage of employees generally across businesses that are really actively, passionately engaged in a business. It's a relatively small percentage. There's a big chunk of people that kind of turn up and do the job, do it perfectly fine, but that's about it. And then there's a number as well, perhaps, that are actively disengaged. People really do like that sense of identity that David Lyons was talking about. If you can really identify with where this business is going, some people call it a mission-led business or a purpose-driven business, you are much more likely to get the best out of people, and you'll get those extra contributions. And there's all sorts of stats around, but companies with a strong mission and purpose, the workers within it are, the actual number is 54% more likely to stay for 5 years or more at a company, but also 30% more likely to go into high performers. But there's also things like the fact that within a purpose-driven company, the trust with the senior leadership team is much greater than just in a company where actually, we're just here making money, kind of thing. So there's a lot around that. And when you think of the challenges as we scale and as we got people, one of the biggest challenges that came out from our research was getting our teams, our employees, to think and behave in the way that we'd like as business owners, because they don't have the same passion about the business. They don't have the same drive that we have. But how can we start to get there? And it's around that purpose, if they can really, really buy into it. So it's really important on a number of levels, I think. And Claire and David were also talking about, Claire was talking about ISO, and we develop systems and processes as we grow the business, and they're really important to have so that new people coming in or whatever, we know what to do and what to follow and how to do various things. But they get us only so far, because there's always things that will come that there isn't a process for. And then, as we were saying, if we've got that guideline as to how to make decisions, how do we think in the way that the business owner would want us to think? We've got that framework. We know what the core purpose is. We know what the core values are, and we can make our own decisions and not have to keep knocking on your door, essentially, to say, oh, Paul, David, what do we do? What do we do next? So really, really important. Essentially, it's about uncovering our why. You've probably come across the Simon Sinek Golden Circle, and then really understanding our why. There's also the hedgehog idea. Paul will probably talk about the hedgehog if we haven't covered that at some other point. But again, it's around that focus, that real combination of what we're passionate about, what differentiates us, what makes us really good, and how do we make money. It's really bringing all these things together to form that identity and focus of the business.
Kevin, you're right that you will come across things that there isn't a process for, or potentially things that the process doesn't cover and needs tweaking and stuff. So obviously you can do that via ISO, but the way we do that is if something goes wrong, we go, okay, so what went wrong? And it's called preventive and corrective action. So you kind of go, okay, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong? And then you either amend a process that, there wasn't a yes, no for that, or you put things in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And then you have to kind of audit and check it that it's not going to happen again because you've put that. And if it's not adequate action that you've taken, you have to go back and tweak it a bit more.
Yes, absolutely. Don't disagree with that at all. Louise, you're smiling.
I was going to say, Kevin knows I'm smiling because that is, it's just you're speaking my language there, Claire. All the lean kind of tools that come out of the toolbox there with 5 whys and the preventative maintenance and the preventative this and all of those kind of things. Absolutely. Look at not just the bad things though that went wrong, but also look at the good things. Look at the things that went really, really well and apply exactly the same process. Because those are the things we want more of. If we've got good things going on, how have we made that happen? And can we get hold of more of them?
Absolutely. And if you think about that, do you remember the submarine captain video with David Marquette and the idea of giving intent rather than giving orders, right? So he was talking about this nuclear submarine. And if we're going to give intent, then that's essentially part of what we're doing with that core purpose and the values. We're giving, especially if you then combine it with our mission as to where we're going. We're stretching it a little bit now into other areas, but it's helping to give that intent, which means that somebody can then essentially know exactly, and they can make their own decisions. And we're not creating a culture where they've just got to keep coming to ask people, or even actually that they've just got to follow that process. They can actually make decisions for themselves because they know the guidelines and the framework within which we're operating. Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.